Hi. Doesn't look like I have anybody watching. I don't want to keep squinting, so I'm just gonna... Okay. Okay. um, so, like I said in my last video, I'm probably just gonna do random live streams until I kind of get back into what it feels like to make regular videos. So today I'm just, like what I did last week, just talking about what's been on my mind. And it's kind of similar to what I talked about last week because last one was called Cults and Bad Guys, and this one is still kind of dealing with the second half of that, but just more specific aspects of it. And I see that I have one person watching. I don't know who it is though. So I I wanted to talk about people who end up in a certain way that just looks really like they're just an asshole, and it's easy to put them in that category. And I was thinking about all the reasons that people can end up the way that they are, and it's usually not as simple. I don't ever believe that someone is just hopeless, that, oh, we should just lock this person up for life, lock them up and throw away the key. Um, they had their chance and they failed, and then just they're just gone because, you know, why are they even alive then? I don't really understand that. I don't believe in a middle ground. I think that if you genuinely believe someone is completely hopeless and there is no chance of ever helping them, I think you should either try to help them or just end their lives. I don't think you should try to do something in between because it doesn't make sense. It almost seems like a fate worse than death. But I don't believe you should do either. I don't believe you should end someone's life. And I don't believe that you should just lock someone up for life. I think that everyone is capable of getting help. But I understand why people want to give up and just say this person is messed up beyond repair and there's no amount of psychology or therapy or any kind of treatment that could help them. So we'll just lock them up and throw away the key. But if you're gonna do that to them, you might as well just kill them. Um, and I think that would be easier because at least then you're freeing them. And again, it's based on belief sets. Some people have very different ideas of what goes on after you die, but um, that's beside the point. Now I have 3 people watching. Oh, and it just went back down to 1. Well, that's better, because last week I think I had 0 for most of the time, but I left it up because, people can watch later. Hopefully this one won't be as long. I know people don't like to watch longer videos, um, but yeah, I think that you shouldn't really just give up on people, and that's because there's always more to it. What got me thinking about this is kind of a weird little story. I was thinking about this video and I went to search for it on YouTube by it was a joke. It was a clip from George Carlin. He was talking about people who are really boring and just go on and on about things nobody cares about, and they'll keep pausing and saying how long ago it was, and they're like, so we went into this cave and I think it was 5 years ago and blah blah blah, and then he's like, or it could have been 8 years ago because I remember this happened, and then he keeps talking, and then this happened and this happened 9 years ago. I know because my wife was pregnant with my kid, and he's 10 now. Or is he 11? He's either 11 or 5. But anyway, he just kept going on, and I just had that pop into my head, and I thought, I want to look that up, and I didn't feel like typing in what I knew it was called, so I just typed in, he's either 11 or 5, and I got this video as the first result of something about a Dr. Phil episode of parents talking about how their 15-year-old son is a pedophile, and I was like, what the hell? So, out of curiosity, I clicked on it, and then I ended up getting really interested in understanding it because it's not the kind of thing you hear about every day. A teenager, and the stuff that he was saying was really disturbing, and the way that people were talking about it and reacting to it, and the parents and everybody, all the treatment, it just is so interesting. And you actually hear his voice, and there were like 5 separate videos that I watched. None of them were long, but I just was like really invested in it, and I kept pausing it and kind of just venting to myself about it. So I was thinking I would probably end up doing a video about it so that I'm not venting and no one's listening. At least this way some people can hear me. Um, but it's interesting to think about this kind of stuff because I understand that a lot of people, if it's an adult, you just say, oh, you're disgusting, what's wrong with you, you're evil. But when it's a 15-year-old, then it's like, oh, well, you can be saved. And it doesn't make sense, it's inconsistent. And I understand that people's brains, at a certain point, you're not as susceptible to learning new things and you're kind of more set in your ways. So I understand that aspect of it, but I still don't think it makes sense, and I still think it's inconsistent. Um, but it was just interesting to see people be so heartbroken, but still somehow hopeful about this kid. And as I'm watching it, I was thinking, was going through my head a lot was that there was something. Um, I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna work my way to it. I'll just give my full like what I interpreted it as. Based on what I saw in the video, what I got out of it was that there was something in his childhood that was missing. There was some kind of neglection, and I think it's what's really interesting. Um, Hi. I didn't even have to lean in because I have my glasses on, and I didn't plan on doing the video with my glasses. I just put them on, kind of as a last second decision. But yeah. So I you know I think it's interesting to look at someone's past and understand that they don't just come out of the womb that way. There is a lot of science to support that some people are just born different, like a psychopath versus a sociopath. You can identify a cause in a sociopath's childhood or past that they kind of became that way, and then a psychopath is just simply born different. But in either scenario, I don't think that someone is just born bad. Being born different doesn't mean that you're bad. It just means that your brain doesn't exactly work in the same way that everyone else's does, and that doesn't really prevent you from being a good person. That doesn't prevent you from having the ability to function in society. And if you really are just born a bad seed, there's, you know, there's no reason to be alive. You wouldn't be here. Nobody, um, as far as I know, it I guess anything is still theoretically possible. And there's always exceptions to every rule, but it is a rule that everyone who's here is here to learn and to grow and to evolve. And we come here with a lot of trials to overcome, all sorts of mental disorders and physical disabilities, sometimes carried over from lessons that we didn't learn in a past life, sometimes carried over from the way that we died in a past life. Hello, you are an amazing human being. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Um, but sometimes it's just based on the lessons that you're supposed to learn, and it's always going to be the same lesson. It's always going to be a different form of choose love over fear, but it's usually related to being humble if you have some kind of illness, because that can lead to a lot of really depressing thoughts and all sorts of anger toward the world and all sorts of issues that just really lower your own energy and just kind of put you in a shitty situation, and you blame everyone else. And then there's people who are disabled even worse than you, and then they are completely happy and enjoying their lives and making the most of it, and then they're not going to be dealing with that when they come back, or they can even heal in this lifetime. Sometimes things are not possible to heal, but sometimes things can just miraculously go away once you got what you needed from it. But you're never supposed to be angry about it. You're never supposed to feel like it was an attack. Sometimes we're attacked, but you're not supposed to be angry about it. If life gives you lemons, you turn it into lemonade. It doesn't matter if it was coming from you, if you picked a lesson that you wanted to learn, or if you were being attacked by someone else. I mean, you could say that you planned out to come in with a disability, or somebody on the street just comes out of nowhere and stabs you, and then you're left with the same disability that you would have had anyway. It's the same result, even though the method is different. And even though you could say, well, it's this person's fault, you don't have to be looking for someone to blame. I hope I'm making sense. um, but it's not about blaming anybody or being angry at the world. Like, you can always figure out a way to work through it. And that's why I think people who come here and they have things that prevent them from you know blending in and just being normal, they're they're on a really different path, and everyone is different. Everybody there's different versions of it. There's different categories of different types of people, and even though everyone is unique, um, there's still different types, and you could do that with anything where there's different types of people. You could group them up and kind of summarize it, like how we have Democratic and Republican parties, even though everyone in the party is still unique. There's different ways to summarize things in people. So people who are born with their brains functioning different are here to do very different things, and some people have really big plans for their lives. They come here and they have a lot that they're going to do. Some people don't have that much to do, but no two life contracts are alike. I don't like using that term because I haven't explained it fully, but it's a term that you can learn about if you go to my playlist. I have a playlist called Ivy Rivera Free Mini Classes, and there's a lot of stuff that I talk about that is in reference to what I learned from her, and everything she talks about is based on her personal experience, and she's a genuine person. She's not like just rambling or sharing her beliefs. Like if she thinks how she put it is that if something is uncertain, if she doesn't know for sure if it's true, she won't even bother talking about it. And I try to be the same way, but sometimes I state a belief as if it's a fact, and I always am trying not to do that. But it's just because it's easier for me to understand it as I'm saying it and as I think of it, because I'm always trying to understand better how things work and why they work that way. And the more I learn about everything, the more sense it makes. It's like you get different pieces of the puzzle, but I always try to explain it in a way that would make sense to anyone. And the way that she does her videos, it's more geared toward a specific audience who already have some kind of understanding of how that kind of stuff works, and I want to appeal to a different audience. So, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, just check out the playlist. She actually has a video called Your Life Contract where she explains what a life contract is. But as I was saying, no two life contracts are alike. That's basically what you sign on to do when you come to Earth. And, you know, you really shouldn't be comparing. You should just kind of stay in your lane and do what you're here to do and not think that you're more important or less important than anyone else. It's not about being important because there really is no objective way to look at things. Everything is subjective and everything is about your personal view. So there really isn't like a larger scale importance. It's if anything that would be collective, everyone kind of coming together. But in that instance, it wouldn't make sense to be competing with each other. So there really is no like one single objective viewpoint that you should be working toward and say I'm doing more important work toward this than anything else. The closest thing you could get to that is community and what's best for everyone and everything that's alive. And in that in that instance, you should be working together and not competing with each other or judging each other or comparing who's more important. But people like to feel important because they feel nervous without it. People that's kind of what leads me back to what I was talking about with that 15-year-old. It's about feeling weak and like you don't have power. So that's what I talked about a lot last week. It wasn't a week ago, but it was my last video. I'm used to doing weekly videos, but that's what I talked about last time. And it's interesting how people are so um, they think so objectively and mathematically about things, and they forget basically what I just explained. I think it's something that we all just kind of intuitively know. But there's a lot of things. Like, we all just intuitively know right and wrong. It's not really something anyone needs to explain to you. You don't need a religion or a book or science or anything to tell you what's right and wrong. All you have to do is just come into the world in the same way a spider knows how to spin a web. You just know what's right and wrong. It's not even a question. And then what happens is your ego gets involved and fear gets involved, and you start rearranging your intuitive kind of knowing of what the truth is, and you start pushing it aside and making room for other narratives based on fear. And and then that gets kind of the lines of reality get blurred and you don't know what's true anymore. And it's all fear based. Anytime you're defensive, anytime you're holding on to something really tight, it's all fear. And people hold on to their beliefs very, very firmly. The religion, whatever it is, if you challenge someone's viewpoint of the world, you're not going to have a good time with them. They're going to be very defensive. And what I find kind of funny, this is another thing I was thinking about, is when you're talking to a Christian, what advice do you give to a person that is constantly bullied? I'm sorry if I'm getting out of the theme. No, 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 that is the theme of the video. I'm gonna get to that. Um, but I'll do it right now so you don't have to wait. Advice that I would give to someone who's constantly bullied. Well, I would ask what kind of bullying is it? If it's physical bullying, maybe learn self-defense. Like, I, you know, I my quick version of that, I would recommend be very firm and confident. And if someone comes up to you, just try to clock their weak points. Like I would go for like the neck or something to kind of catch them off guard and disable them. And you have to also know if they're too big. Sometimes someone, it doesn't matter how quick or smart you are, you just don't have a fighting chance. And in that case, you just have to do whatever you can do. Sometimes there's a situation you just can't get out of, and you're gonna get hurt or you're gonna get killed, but those are a lot more uncommon. Usually there is a way to get out of it if you're smart enough. And you don't have to be big or strong or whatever. You just have to be confident and know that you don't deserve to get bullied, and then know that you're completely justified in defending yourself. And I would, if I saw someone who I knew I could take, I wasn't like afraid of, they're not some big, beefy, muscly person who's like towering over me, I would go for their neck. If it's someone like that, that's not even going to do anything. Um, and you know, if I managed to get them down, I would probably just let them know that I don't have time for this shit, and if they ever hurt me again, um, I'll make sure something else happens to them. I don't know. I picture myself like threatening to, like, if I get somebody on the ground, I picture myself like putting my foot on their neck and say, I'm gonna just stomp right through your neck. And I could do that. And then as I'm saying that, they know that I could do that. And then the power dynamic has changed. But then you don't do it. You just let them know that you could. And then they learn not to mess with you. Sometimes that intimidates them. Sometimes it makes them hate you even more. And then they come up with some elaborate plan to catch you off guard. But you have to know. You have to kind of read the energy of the situation. And I also recommend just talking to them and trying to level with them, because you have to remember it's not about hero and villain. It's really just we're all kind of in the same boat, which is why I wanted to talk about why people are bullies and predators, and like I said, if it's not physical bullying, then if it's like online harassment or just people saying things to you, this is what I've noticed a lot, is that there's a lot of people who just bully in the most hurtful ways, and they don't even realize it. Like they'll just give you a dirty look, or they'll come over and say, hey, can you come here, and they'll be laughing at something, and then they'll ask you a question, and then you'll answer it, and then they'll just laugh even harder, and then you'll say, what is so funny, and they'll just say you wouldn't get it, and then you're like, oh my god, what, like, are they just laughing at me? And part of you just knows that it's just a bunch of idiots being idiots, but it's so hard to feel like, suddenly you're like the weird one, the target is on your back, and it feels really uncomfortable to be in situations like that. I think that kind of stuff can be really harmful, and probably more lasting than just like punching someone, because punch goes away, but still, like, people get picked on and bullied all the time for so many reasons. And if you're constantly getting bullied, just try to learn the different ways that you can defend yourself, and never believe that you deserve it. That's the other really important thing. So okay, so what was I saying before? I was talking about um people kind of getting into um idea that they're weak and that they need to compensate, they need power. So this kid who I was talking about in that video, the 15-year-old, or that series of 5 videos, he's there was this theme of him liking power and attention, and that was interesting, because he told his family, he said, I have all these urges, and there's all these things that I want to do to my younger siblings, and these things that I've done to kids and want to do to kids and stuff like this, and just coming out with all this stuff. And you know it, the way that he talked, there was something so interesting about the way he spoke that just felt like it wasn't what he was saying. There was something behind it. Felt like a cry for attention. And that's not to say that he was faking anything for attention, but there was something that was it was a cry for help. And it wasn't as much he didn't come off as scary. He just came off as like really broken and lost. And they hadn't even like I don't know, like given him like an MRI or anything to like study his brain, which is a really important thing to do if you're trying to understand the reason that someone is that way. Because kids will fake any number of things if they're feeling like they need to, if they feel neglected. You may think that you're giving them all the love in the world, but it just takes one person. If there's just one person in their life who looks at them the wrong way, they can feel unloved and neglected, even if everyone else is telling them that they love them. They won't believe it. And they don't consciously know that always. So all they know is that they don't feel loved, and that festers, and then they express it in a lot of different ways. And some people do make up a lot of things for attention. So you have to actually make sure that there is something different with his brain, first of all. And if there is, um, just how do you handle that going forward? It doesn't mean, oh, just lock him up and throw away the key, or try to give him this treatment and just make up shit. I think when someone is doing that, they are coming from a lack of empathy, and that is there. He kept talking about power. It was about power. He liked how powerful it made him feel and stuff like that. And what makes that interesting to me is that it says he feels powerless without it. And the fact that he was telling everyone about it, the fact that he didn't just do it and keep his mouth shut about it, says that he wanted attention. So I'm thinking, and they even mentioned at one point that he said it was a possibility that he could have been abused in his childhood by someone, and that there were other details I'm not 100% clear on that really kind of gave me a little bit of a look into his past, and it was kind of confirming what I was thinking. And I think one of the most common causes of someone becoming an abuser is that they were abused. What any kind of abuse, like even alcoholic parents can end up having alcoholic kids, and parents who hit their kids will go to school and hit other people, and like if you molest someone, they're going to grow up and become a molester. Not always, but if you look at people's pasts, I think the odds are that most child molesters have been molested. Not all of them. There are other causes, but that is true for a good amount of them, and that's just wild to me. That it's like a cycle. It just goes on, and people don't talk about it. People prefer to look the other way because it's so dark, and people don't like to acknowledge things like that. I mean, especially if you're a parent. Can you imagine if you had kids, and your kid came up to you and told you that he was having all of these urges and feelings of things that he wanted to do to his younger siblings and to other little children, like 5 years old and younger. Like, it it's so much easier to just not want to believe it, to pretend that you didn't hear it, or to create a sort of fake world to live in that's easier and nicer than the real one. But that's sort of what they're doing, and you don't want to do that yourself, because they're not living in reality. They're not in touch with reality. And they talked about in that video how the kid didn't seem to understand why it was wrong or how it affected people, and they said that he believes his victims will get over it, even though other people don't always. He said that his victims will, and he doesn't really believe that. He knows that that's not true, but he doesn't care. And that's the issue. He's too starved for his own attention to care about other people. This is what a sociopath is. It's someone who is so drained and has learned to use other people instead of developing healthy connections. Sort of like there's like a healthy way to balance out with someone. I think of like if you're in a small community and you're trying to like harvest food and plant seeds or something, and then one selfish person who's terrified and doesn't really doesn't trust other people, doesn't see his place there, so he just takes all of the food, and then they have nothing. And that's sort of like what it is. It's you have to have a little bit of trust as you're doing it, because it won't last, and then you're going to have to go somewhere else, and you're going to just um it's just going to run dry eventually. Like you can't just keep taking and taking and taking. So, there's this post that I saw that says, if you're a giver, you have to know your boundaries because takers don't have any. And that's because they're just panicked. I mean, it's like a drowning man will hold your head underwater to keep his head above water because he's panicked, and you have to know how to help them without actually, because then if they drown you, they're going to just drown too anyway, and you're both dead, and nothing happened. So you have to be careful with people like that. You have to understand when they function, when they think that way, and you have to understand that you shouldn't be afraid of them, you shouldn't judge them, but you just see it for what it is, and understand that behind every angry, scary person, every predator, every bully, every serial killer, every angry dad in the world, behind it all there is just this really, really scared child who feels weak and who feels threatened and vulnerable and needs to wear a shell to protect himself, but doesn't really, because that's not strength, that's fear. That's not having the courage and faith to stand up and say, I can do this. That's like looking away with your shield up the whole time and like, I don't know, I don't believe in myself, I don't think I can do this without my shield. That's sort of what it is. And when you have that self-image, seeing yourself that weak, you're gonna be in complete denial of it. If anybody says you think of yourself as weak, you're gonna say the opposite. You think that you're really strong, and look how many people you can dominate, and look what you do to this, and I'm scary, and I like being scary. And I could tell that that kid, he liked being thought of as scary, as someone who needed all this attention, as someone who suddenly he became the center of attention. And even though it was negative attention, it made him feel like he could make things happen, and he had a little bit of control over his own life. And another interesting thing about that is that he was apparently doing things to little girls and boys, and that tells me that he is probably either bisexual or just because usually I understand that pedophilia is about power. It really doesn't matter to most pedophiles about gender. Like they'll just do anything to anyone as long as they can feel powerful. But there's still usually some kind of suppressed feeling if you're a minority that kind of makes you feel like a target and you feel weird and separate from the rest of the world. And you don't. It doesn't even matter what kind of upbringing you have. It still is really a challenge to know that you're different. To know that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you can't really suppress that kind of attraction that you have. So or your gender identity or whatever it is. So you just automatically feel like there's a target on your back, and you're a lot more susceptible to feeling alone in the world and kind of boxed out and judged by other people. So assuming that is the case for this kid, um, that would explain a lot too. Kind of like another piece of the puzzle. But it's just interesting to me. This kid specifically isn't really um, like it's just people like that in general, because what stood out to me was that this wasn't a one of a kind case. I understood that it represented a whole type of person that's really common. And if you actually look at registered sex offenders, there's like a map online that you can see local registered sex offenders, which, by the way, are pedophiles who have been caught and released. They're literally everywhere. These are the ones that we have deliberately released back into the wild. Why? Why would you catch someone who you know is a predator, who who is so consumed by darkness that they can't even function in society? They can't even understand what what makes something right and wrong. They just see it as a societal construct, morality. They don't really understand it, and they don't understand how it affects them. And you catch these dangerous dangerous people, and then you keep them in prison instead of actually giving them the help that they need and understanding the roots of their issues, and really just kind of taking a smart approach to helping them. and not releasing them until you actually know for sure that they've gotten the help that they need. Instead, you just lock them behind bars where they're getting probably tortured and raped and just all sorts of messed up things that happen in prison, at least in this country, in America. I understand prisons are different in other parts of the world, but in the US, it's pretty messed up. Um, and it doesn't help people. And then you just release them back out into the wild, and all they learned is how to be quieter, how to get away with it. And a parole officer isn't going to help with that. If they don't follow you around 24/7, you can get away with a lot. And and these people know how to do it too. They know who to target. They know who isn't going to tell anyone. They know when to do it. And you know, maybe sometimes they learn not to do it, but doesn't doesn't change the fact that they still want to. You haven't addressed the root of the issue. Sending someone to prison does not address the root of the issue, and whatever therapy they offer to people like that, it's not helping because they're still just everywhere. Why else do you think we would want to see them and have them be registered if we didn't think they were still dangerous? No one wants a registered sex offender living in their neighborhood. Um, it makes no sense. Please make it make sense because I don't understand it. But what freaks me out the most is that if you understand that these are just the ones that have been caught and released, imagine how many haven't. It's like when they say for every spider you see, there's 100 you don't see. Like this is a really really serious problem, and that's why it was so interesting to learn about this 15-year-old because someone at such a young age, where people are actually talking about it, and it's not just some old man no one cares about. They're just going to send him to prison. He actually got a Dr. Phil episode, and I got a little bit of a peek into his life and his past and it was real. It wasn't invented for a TV show. So it was interesting to me, and I wanted to think a lot about it and understand it. And you know, what I came up with was basically just that it's always about feeling weak and feeling like you have to compensate for how weak you feel. And that applies to a lot of other areas, which leads me into bullying. People who bully are I'm not even talking about bullies. I take my own past for example, and I remember in school there were a lot of times when I would overhear kids like in crowded groups like at recess or in the cafeteria having these conversations with each other about things that were going right over my head. I had no idea what they were talking about, and they barely did either. Like sometimes I would hear stuff from like my cousins. I think one time my cousin heard something in school that Taylor Swift, this was like a long time ago, but he said that Taylor Swift titled her album Red because she was on her period or something. And I was just thinking about that because she just announced that she's remaking that album and she just revealed the track list for it. So that was on my mind and I was like, where did he hear that? And I haven't looked it up. I don't know if that was like a joke on the internet or anything, but what I assume right now is that he heard it at school, that kids were talking about it at school, and you know, and I understand how you could make that up. You could say like, oh well, all the songs are like breakup songs, and she must have been really moody and she was on her period, which is misogynistic and really inappropriate. And that kind of thing is just normal. Like it just happens all the time. There's all sorts of casual homophobia, transphobia, racism, misogyny that's just everywhere. But as soon as you call it what it is, people get really defensive and they feel like it's a personal attack on them. Oh my god, you're calling me racist? I'm not a racist. I'm not a homophobe. By the way, a lot of people say I'm not a homophobe and they say that they're not afraid of gays. If you actually look at the definition of the word phobia, it means an irrational fear of or a strong aversion to something. And a strong aversion is dislike. So if you dislike a certain type of person, you have a phobia for that. That's technically what it means. So don't use that argument. You're just making yourself sound stupid as you are, because a lot of these people really don't know what they're talking about. They're just angry, and I got a little exposure to that when I went on the site Omegle where you can chat with strangers the other night, and I was just getting like attacked left and right by people because I feel like Omegle it's a site where you can literally use it wherever you are in the world. Pretty much, if you have internet access, you have access to Omegle, and I sort of feel like I was getting a little peek into the life of the average internet user, which is not accurately represented by media and TV and what you hear talked about and promoted. When you look at the world and what goes on in TV today and all the politically correct and aware stuff, it almost sounds like people are sort of waking up and becoming more conscious of what's right and wrong and why it's right and wrong. And even though it's not perfect yet, it's headed in the right direction. But when you still take a closer look at the average internet user from anywhere in the world, it's pretty disturbing to see that it really hasn't made much progress. And it still kind of reminds me of what it was like when I was in school. It's kind of the same thing. And you just hear a bunch of girls laughing or kids laughing about something, and you're like, what are you talking about? And there were always boys talking about stuff. When I was in fifth grade, I was in the after school program, and there were all sorts of groups of kids that would like bunch together and talk about things. And I just kind of embraced that I was weird, and I never wanted to fit in. I never wanted to be like other people. I wanted to kind of I saw that behavior as weird, and I wanted to get away from it. I thought that they were weird and that I was the only normal one. So I sort of developed this facade of just extra weirdness. I amplified how weird I normally am, just so you sort of can't tell. It's sort of like, am I being serious? Is it satire, or am I? Do I actually not know what they're talking about? And I didn't want you to know the answer, because if you just think I'm, if you're not sure if I'm joking or if I'm being serious, that kind of gives me the freedom to do whatever I want. So I felt a lot safer when I did that, and it was how I got through being in public school. But yeah, so hearing people talk about stuff like that though, and looking back on it in retrospect, I have to think that they heard stuff from other kids from their home. A lot of people, when they hear kids, they're not like me. I was totally fine with not fitting in, and I thought everyone else was weird. But some people, when they hear people talking about something that they don't understand, they'll pretend to get it, and they'll just go along with it and act like they understand it. They'll pay really close attention to context clues and try to get it. And I'm just standing there like, all right, backing up, like, so I never really was like that. But I didn't get made fun of for it, because like I said, no one knew if I was ever being serious or not. So sometimes people would laugh at me, but it was when I was trying to get them to laugh at me. So I didn't feel bothered by it. And I actually had friends. A lot of people liked me and said really nice things about me. So I never had really a hard time in school, but there were still groups that I felt like they were actually having a hard time, but they were also the ones who would make other people feel uncomfortable, who would laugh at other people, who would be bullies basically. And even though they're not punching or hitting anyone, they still have this idea. They're sort of all in survival mode, and that's why they're learning about stuff from their parents, from TV, from stuff that they hear in their families, probably older siblings. I think a lot of them have older siblings, um, and just there's a lot of immaturity there, and they hear it from other kids, and then they try to act like they know what they're talking about, and then they go home and they ask their older siblings about it, they figure it out, and I'm just avoiding all of it. So there was a lot of stuff that most kids are aware of and know about, um, by like fifth grade, that I didn't learn about until I was like 14, 15 years old. And um, and, and it's interesting that I never had an interest in it. I was just kind of like, I felt like I didn't need to know, and to me it was all just weird. But they were talking about a lot of things that they didn't really understand. Like I gave the example of when my cousin told me that Taylor Swift called her album Red because she was on her period, and I was like, what does that even mean? Um, Kids just say stuff and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what it means when they say it, but they hear people say it, so they just go on and on. And I think this carries into high school in kind of a different way, where everyone feels like they're supposed to start acting like adults now and they're supposed to be mature. So nobody feels mature. Nobody really knows what they're doing. So you compensate. You pretend like you know what you're doing. You just fake it till you make it. And then pretty much everyone ends up faking it, unfortunately. If you really look at the world, no one knows what they're doing. Everyone's just waiting to have a breakdown and just sob. But nobody actually allows that to come out. And if they do, it's unfortunately it's when they're feeling entitled or greedy, and they're like not getting what they wanted, and they're feeling like a victim and poor me, or they're trying to manipulate a situation. People don't really just sob to just really see what's underneath and face all of the pain that they don't want to look at. And if you did that, you'd feel so free afterwards. It's like a heavy cloud just disappeared. The rain came out, then the clouds cleared and the sun came out. That's how you would feel. You have to let it out, but you have to face it. There's a lot of things you don't want to look at, and it's not easy to just make it happen. So, you have to do some self reflection, and that requires there's all sorts of ways to do that. You could go to therapy. You could go to therapy. You should go to therapy either way, but you could also like look into energy work and like shamanic journeying or Reiki, things like that, to just kind of, sometimes you need someone to tell you, and people like that, intuitive people, they can kind of just look and they can tell you what you don't want to face, and then you'll know it. It'll resonate with you. You'll be like, yeah, that's what it is. But that's the thing. You always know what it is. You always know what's right and wrong. You always know what you really want. When you get panicked though, when you're in survival mode, you just forget that you know it. um, but it's always there. So sometimes you need someone else to point it out for you, and and you know that's okay. I think there's a lot of shame around people being in therapy. People make fun of you for anything. I mean, literally anything. And if you just go out into the world expecting everyone to get you and to get your situation and to be kind and empathetic, you got another honey, you got a big storm coming. Um, it's uh, sorry that just I just realized that there's probably people who don't know what I'm quoting. But it's a meme. Just type that in and look it up, and you'll see what I'm referencing. But because I have people of all ages who watch this, and I feel like younger people are more aware of memes and stuff like that. But anyway, it's it's not something you can just expect. You have to know that people aren't going to know your situation. People don't care. People are wrapped up in their own world. And when someone is selfish, it's because it's a burden. I think it really is a burden to be so focused on yourself, because why would you want to be so focused on yourself? If you feel like you have everything you need, you are strong and empowered, you can do anything you want, and you have everything that you need, then why bother paying attention to yourself? At that point, what else is there to do but go out into the world and start thinking about how you can give back to other people? But when you're so focused on your own needs, that's because you feel deprived. That's because you don't feel that you're getting your needs met. And that's because you don't think you're strong enough to kind of go out into the world without getting your needs met and everything. So that's sort of like, you have to know that when you go out into the world, people are usually not aware of this, because this is something that is really not taught to people. And I hated getting that blow of reality, seeing people on Omegle who are just not even close to aware of this information, because I get so much exposure to people who are aware of it, because on Instagram I always am being shown like posts from like woke people and stuff, and even that then there's still aspects of it that they're missing, because there's so much misinformation floating around. Pretty much anything can be tainted by greed and people who want to make a profit off of something. Like, there's so many aspects of spirituality that have been kind of muddied by people trying to turn it into something to make money from, and to just kind of do it for the wrong reasons. And although there's nothing wrong with asking for money for it if you're doing it as a job, like therapists get paid, nobody makes fun of them for that. It's not like, people will often say, if you go to get like a reading from a medium, if you're doing God's work, why should I have to pay you? Well, if you're going to get a heart surgery, it's saving your life, but the doctor obviously has a home too. They can't be doing that and then also working another job. They need to get paid. And when you do that full time, you don't really have time to do another thing to get paid. So you need some way to have income. Otherwise, you have to marry someone who can take care of you, and that's not really fair, because you're still spending all your time doing something and you're not getting anything back for it. So that's really not fair. And if someone ever tells you that you shouldn't be taking money for a job that you do, you know, maybe you are doing it for the wrong reasons. Maybe you're only doing it for money. Maybe you're being dishonest. But I think you would know that. Like I said, if you're doing something wrong. So just kind of ask yourself, am I? And if you know the answer is no, then just say, this person has no right to speak to me that way, and tell them to fuck off. So, you know, just to deal with that really quickly. Um, but there's a lot of people who just kind of mess things up, and there's so much misinformation floating around. And I was thinking that that was bad. And then I get a peek into the average internet user and their lives, and I'm like, oh my God, nothing has changed since I was in school. It's the same. It's just a mess. And and I was like really disappointed, and I still am, because it's sad. This is not information that people are aware of, and it motivates me to want to talk about it more and get it out there, because it's so vitally important that people understand this. We can't just keep going on like this. We're going to kill each other. Like, I'm not kidding. We cannot continue to function as a species on this planet if we don't learn this information fast, because we're literally just like all animals in survival mode, just defending our food. Don't take that. That's mine. It's mine. And how do you expect to function when you think like that? I saw a video with someone that I was following on Snapchat. Just uh, it was really weird. He said that somebody just randomly gave him a milkshake, and he was like, "This is suspicious. I'm not doing that." And I thought he was gonna throw it out, and I thought in my head, that's wasteful to just throw it out. Like, I get that it's suspicious, but but then I thought, okay, I guess you shouldn't drink it if you don't know what's in it, or why someone gave it to you. I would throw it out, I guess. But then I watched him throw it over a bridge, and I thought to myself, okay, that is just straight up polluting. And I think he threw the straw too, and and it's just, he posted this publicly for anyone who's following him. But I mean, it technically wasn't public. But I just thought to myself, like, why does this just happen all the time? This is just a regular person. You're not going to see a celebrity doing that because people would cancel them. But, you gotta understand that celebrities aren't the average person. They're trying to be people pleasers most of the time, and they're afraid of getting canceled because cancel culture is quite vicious. And it's also quite insane. Most of the things people cancel you for are just absolute insanity. And again, I don't believe people should be canceled. I think if you're here, you have the opportunity to learn and grow. We need to stop thinking of people as lost causes. And if you genuinely believe someone is completely beyond saving, why do you think they should still be here? What is the point of keeping that person alive if they're really just a waste of space who's doing nothing but taking up space and oxygen and causing trouble when they're actually out and about? Like, I just don't understand that. But people don't take things seriously anymore. They think they can just they do all these things for the wrong reasons. It's serious when somebody rapes someone, when you find out that someone is uh, is a predator or a racist, and people just talk about it like it's disgusting. Like Dan Schneider on Nickelodeon. Like, there's so many people who talk about him like it's a joke. And honestly, even I make like references sometimes if I'm like, there's like a SpongeBob episode or iCarly, and there's like all these weird things with feet. And this guy is clearly a predator, and he, clearly has a foot fetish, and he has all of this stuff in in his TV shows that he's inserted weird, creepy jokes. And they did a reboot of iCarly, and I started watching it just because I used to watch the old show, and then I started rewatching the show, the old one after it, and I'm like disturbed by how many creepy things there are with feet. It's like, it's really creepy, and you don't do that when you're working with children, and they're, hearing the actors like talk about it, clearly he didn't provide a really comfortable, safe environment for them. There's something in his eyes that just says, "Stay away from me," um, and people talk about it like it's not extremely serious. People say that's gross, or, oh, I bet Dan Schneider had something to do with this, and it's not funny. Like, people stopped taking things seriously, and it became about canceling someone, and this person is racist, or this person's bad, this person's this and that, and then when you lump it into just part of cancel culture, it diminishes it and takes the attention off the real issue, which, when someone is racist, it's about racism. It's not about them specifically. You know, like, I think of Billie Eilish apparently um, said, or mouthed the word CHINK. I don't want to say it because I don't want to bother explaining myself. I personally don't believe there's anything wrong with saying words because it's just a word. And, but, it's really weird, because you know that even as you're saying that, people are going to be hearing it, and they're saying, no, it's not. These are all the effects it has when you use the word. And people get so righteous and defensive. And sometimes they really have good intentions, but a lot of the time it's like teenagers who are just it's some self-righteous thing. It's an ego thing. And I really think people need to stop taking words so seriously because like I said, when you make it about the word or the person who said the word, you are taking the focus off the real issue, which is racism itself. And if racism was not an issue, there would literally be nothing wrong with any racial term. Everyone could just say it and no one would worry that they were being racist because everyone knows that racism has died and that it's no longer a thing. No one judges anyone or assumes anything about anyone based on their ethnicity. But that's not the reality that we live in. So those words still have power and meaning. And I think when you avoid the word, you're almost avoiding the topic, and you're trying to hide that racism is still an issue. And and the fact that you want to avoid it just shows that it still is. But we need to attack it at the root because there's so much more to it than that. I don't believe that I don't believe that you should be canceling someone for the I just read on Wikipedia why Billie Eilish was canceled. It was just on her page for her song NDA. For some reason, they had information about what she was being canceled for, and they explained that it was queer baiting and posting "I love girls" to promote her music video. I don't understand how that is queer baiting because I distinctly remember her saying in the past that she was straight. So if if you think that that was her coming out, that's kind of your problem. Um, People should be allowed to say that and not have it mean anything more than what it is. And also, um, kind of on an unrelated note, I don't think anybody is really 100% anything, because we're all I'm sure we've all been like I believe in reincarnation. I'm sure we've all been all sorts of things. I kind of see myself as like 50-50. I really don't think that I'm more masculine or feminine or anything. I just kind of am just me, and I don't really think about that much. I just kind of am the way that I am, and I've always embraced that I'm weird and think of it as a good thing. But I don't believe that anybody is one thing. I think the people who act especially masculine or especially feminine are doing it out of fear, and they're not really acknowledging that it's okay to just have a little bit of fun on both sides. And it's the same with who you're attracted to, not just your own identity, but if you're attracted to different people, you can experiment, you can explore. You don't have to put a label on it. You don't have to call yourself something. If you know that you have a preference, you can call yourself something to help people understand better what your preference is. But it really doesn't define who you are, though, and that's why the whole idea of queer baiting is just so ridiculous to me. But it's just a term that I think was invented to perpetuate cancel culture and again distract from the real issue, which is homophobia, and I experienced a lot of that too when I was on Omegle the other day, and I can't even tell you how many people said extremely messed up things to me, and based on knowing literally nothing about me, just the way that I talked and the way that I looked, and people called me ugly, which it's really weird because I'm not. But somebody, a lot of them were kids, so I guess. But that's the thing. It's like people just say shit. People will just say whatever they want, and it's not about you most of the time. Um, it's only about you if they're genuinely coming from a place of compassion. Because if someone's attacking you, it's about them. Because there's no reason to attack someone if you don't feel threatened by their existence. If you think that they can just go about doing whatever they want, and it's not going to bother you, why would you even think about them? You only think about them when you feel threatened by their existence, when you feel responsible for their behavior or their future. So you're annoyed that they're not doing what you want them to do. So you act hateful toward them. Um, but when you're just a kid making fun of people, it's really just you're just trying to have a good time, and you're just doing what you think is normal, and you're doing what you think is fun, and you're doing what everyone else is doing, and you're not really embracing your individuality. You're not really doing what is genuinely fun. You're just denying the reality around you. And I get it. We live in a really messed up world, and there's a lot of things to be angry about and miserable about. But like I said, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. You can choose to be bitter or better. It's literally up to you, all of it. and I wrote an Instagram post that I'm gonna do a video on, where I explained that it's sort of, it's not really a question of how do I put, excuse me, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't burp. Um, so I explained, I'm trying to remember what I said, because I just totally lost my point. I just got distracted by the burp. Oh, damn it. I'll come back to it if I remember it. But yeah, I was, where has this video gone? I talked about bullies and predators, and I was talking about cancel culture and how it doesn't take these things seriously, and it's just rambling. But do you see? This is why I needed to do these kind of casual live streams before I can go back to doing actual helpful episodes of my other show, because I just am not in a place right now where I can do a really carefully constructed video that makes sense. I just need to vent and ramble, and I like that I have a platform where I can do that. I appreciate that some people watch. I see I've had one person who was tuned in pretty much the whole time. I don't know if it's the same person, because it did say 0 for a couple seconds a few times, but I got one person watching right now. So yeah, it's I appreciate anyone who watches all the way through, especially when it's long. Like it just shows that you're interested and that I'm making sense, and it helps me feel like I'm not just some random person rambling about nonsense. Um, like I really appreciate that, and I think I'm gonna have to go. If I could remember what I'll just do a video on the Instagram thing. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read it. It's gonna be an episode of my actual show, so it will be like an edited video. I'll only edit it if there's like pauses, if there's anything to edit out. Because if it's just me consistently talking and there's nothing to edit out, obviously I'm not gonna bother. But the video is gonna be me reading the post. I'll probably just copy it and paste it in my notes and then print it out and read it on a piece of paper, and I'll go like bit by bit as I'm reading it, and I'll pause and I'll elaborate on something if I think that it needs further explanation, and then that'll be the video. So that way it's the post, it's what I said in the post, but it's also a little bit more and explaining anything that might not have made sense in the first place. And it'll be an episode of my show Tea Talks, and every episode of that is going to be under 10 minutes. And my other show Turbo Topics, every episode of that is going to be under 1 minute. Sometimes they'll be, I mean, they could really be anything between like 5 to 10 seconds to like 59 seconds. Like there's really no rule for that. And same with Tea Talks, except those have to be more than 1 minute. And they could even be like a minute and a half or 2 minutes, but if it's longer than a minute, it's not going to be a Turbo Topics. I just do those. They'll also be vertical and horizontal, so that's another way to tell them apart. And they'll be branded as shorts, Turbo Topics. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching. I said I was not going to talk as long as I did last time, and I did even longer, but it's okay because I feel better having said all this. Thank you for watching. Um, I'll see you soon when I do my video. Probably do that in like just a couple days. Have a good night.